If you've experienced a spiritual awakening and are now experiencing the exact opposite of that, so a lot of heavy dark feelings or what Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body, then this video is going to be perfect for you because I'm going to take you through all the different stages of awakening. But most importantly, I'm going to tell you how you can go through these stages of awakening with the minimum amount of damage to your life, to your relationships, and to your health as possible. So let's get started, shall we? So the ordinary person, the person before they begin to awaken, are completely identified with their thoughts, with their feelings, and with their intentions. As you begin to awaken through the process of meditation, through yoga, through psychedelic journeys, or any kind of practice, or sometimes even naturally, you begin to notice that you can observe your thoughts, your feelings, and your intentions. That means that before you begin to awaken, these things are completely identified with who you are. But as you begin to awaken, you can start to observe these. So as an external observer, that gives you a lot of freedom. Because if you can observe your thoughts, if you can observe your intentions, if you can observe your feelings, that gives you a certain sense of freedom from them so that you can make more choice in your life. That is the beginning of awakening. Secondly, we come to what we call the opening or Kundalini awakening or Pseudonirvana. One can stumble upon this stage through the process of meditation, through yoga, through psychedelic journeys. This stage is extremely pleasant, so it can trick you to feel like you are actually already awakened because this stage comes with kind of like a very crystal clear vision. You can feel that you have awakened. Your mind can be extremely clear. Some people can develop a bit of a messianic complex where they can think that it's their role to awaken the world and to convert all these people and get them to do all these different practices. This stage can also feel very effortless. Your dreams can become very vivid. You can feel as if you're meditating in your dreams. The first time I encountered this stage was on a 10-day silent meditation retreat. I think it was my third silent meditation retreat. And I remember getting up from a 2-hour meditation session. And when I opened my eyes, I could see human beings in a way that I could never see them before. So in this stage, your vision can also change in a way that you can see human beings in a slightly different way. You can feel like, wow, I've never seen reality in this way before. However, many people mistake this for actual awakening, but it is only the very beginning of the spiritual roller coaster, my friends. Whether you continue to practice or not, you're going to find yourself in what we call the stage of dissolution. In the stage of dissolution, you start noticing that you and the world are not as solid as you initially thought. Your vision can become grainy at this point, whereas before it was crystal clear. And you may notice that whatever you look at in the world, whether internally or externally, you start to notice the endings of things, the endings of everything, the endings of situations, the endings of thoughts, the endings of experiences. And this can create a lot of fear. It can even create some anxiety within you as the world seems so unstable in a way that you've never seen before. You can also notice that this can happen to some people, that your walking becomes a bit like you're walking on a boat. I remember spending maybe 4 weeks in a way that I felt like wherever I was walking, I felt like I was walking on very unstable ground. This stage can also cause migraines as the mind and the body begin to adapt to this stage of awakening. So there can be a lot of different migraines in the front of the head, in the forehead, and it can be very difficult to meditate. As one progresses from the stage of dissolution deeper into the dark night of the soul, there can be a lot of physical and mental purification at different energy centers in the body. So sometimes in the neck, in the chest, in the belly. And there can be a very distant past memories from the past, even from your childhood, and you can begin to see how different negative experiences that you had in your childhood affect how you are today. There can be a very deep desire to renounce the world and go on some monastery or have this feeling that this world is not really worth it and the only thing that's worth it is spiritual awakening. So many people can kind of like quit their jobs, quit their relationships and go on some kind of spiritual journey at this point. It's a very well-known stage because what you see is that in this stage you have a very deep aversion to reality. Aversion to reality, aversion to yourself. You can start to see how human suffering is created in the mind and externally. So this stage is also called, in the Buddhist terminology, insight into suffering. You can also have visions of death, visions of rotting bodies, different visions of illness as you begin to have a deeper and deeper understanding of suffering. This stage can take quite a while, and many people make the mistake of making very crucial life decisions while in the dark night of the soul. So if one continues to practice, one comes to what we call the equanimity stages, or mind like the sky. So the energy begins to move further up into the forehead as different circuitry begins to develop in the body as you begin to awaken more and more. What you find is that the mind becomes very, very calm, very spacious, very unreactive. In my practice, I used to call this crystal mind or mirror mind. The mind can become so vast that it can contain anything. Any experience is acceptable. It can be a lot of love, a lot of peace, a kind of a realization of emptiness as well, which means that you can begin to notice that there is nobody in there. It is the universe that is looking through your eyes, or God, or whatever it is you want to call it. The realization of emptiness begins to unfold in this stage of equanimity. Your vision can also begin to change. You can see reality in such a magical and beautiful way that you can look at a line of ants and it can seem like the most beautiful, magical thing in the world. You can look at a tree and be completely amazed. Your perception of color can be so vivid as if you're on some kind of psychedelic trip without taking any kind of substance. So if one continues to practice and the circuitry in the mind develops further, one can come to what we call stream entry. So stream entry is actually the first stage of real awakening. That means that before stream entry, whenever you stop practicing, you would always backslide in the process of awakening. But with stream entry, this causes a permanent shift in perspective in the mind and in the body. And so in the Buddhist dogma, if you choose to believe it or not, they say that after stream entry, one can only come into this world 7 more times maximum before attaining full liberation. And one can no longer fall into the lower world of suffering, such as the animal world or different realms of ghosts. If you choose to believe it or not, that is the dogma. And so after the first stage of awakening, one finds himself back into Pseudonirvana. So as in reality, we don't have winter just once. We don't have summer just once. We don't have spring just once. We have them again and again and again. It's the same with this process of awakening. Once one goes through this process of stream entry, which is experienced a bit like a kind of reality disappearing and coming back, and then it keeps cycling on again. And so once you've attained stream entry, you're gonna always experience these different stages. So the dark night of the soul, the equanimity stages, and the cessation. And this is gonna repeat throughout your life. And so it's very important to know that, because people think that whatever they're experiencing now is permanent. But in the game of awakening, the main rule is nothing is permanent. Everything is always changing. However, stream entry is the first stage when one gets a taste of liberation. One gets a taste of what it feels like to be without an ego. But the ego is always going to come back at this point until one has attained full liberation. And so it's very important to attain this stream entry. I wanted to mention that even though many people think that when they experience this Kundalini awakening or Pseudonirvana, that this is awakening, or even sometimes in the equanimity stages, it is only stream entry which creates this permanent shift in perspective in your mind that you can never backslide from. So I always wanted to mention that it's super important to respect the seasons of spiritual practice, because when you're experiencing the dark night of the soul, this is exactly what you need to be experiencing in that moment. And so not trying to move further than you already are. So if you try to grow a tree and you water it and you give it sun, the tree is always going to grow in its own time. But if you give it too much water, if you give it too much sun, it's actually going to kill the tree. It's the same with the practices of awakening. You need to give it proper practice, but you cannot overdo it, because that will stress you out and that will make you stop practicing actually after a while. And it's also super important to know that these stages, while the map is not the territory, these stages, they hijack your perception. So when you're experiencing the dark night of the soul, reality is going to appear very grim, and you're going to want to renounce the world, leave your relationship, and you're going to feel very averse to this whole world and think that spiritual practice is the most important thing in the world. However, when you're experiencing the Pseudonirvana, the Kundalini awakening, or the equanimity stages, your reality is going to be so different. So this is how the maps can help us. They can help keep us even-headed when we know that in every particular moment we're experiencing a different stage. When we're going through the dark night of the soul, we have to stay aware that this is simply a stage that's going to pass, and try to limit the amount of very crucial life decisions that we're making that could harm our relationships, that could harm different aspects of our life. So I want to also take you through the different pitfalls that people experience on this process of awakening that I've noticed and experienced in my own life. So the common pitfalls are making bad life decisions in the dark night of the soul. So choosing to get divorced, for example, for some of us, leaving your job in a situation where it may not be the right thing to do, or going on some kind of spiritual journey when it's not appropriate. Another thing is having no teacher or sangha or community. The Buddha said that spiritual friendship or spiritual community is one of the most important things on this path of awakening. Another mistake that people make is stopping your practice before stream entry. Getting stream entry is the most important stage in your awakening, because it is the first time that the permanent switch in perspective is going to occur. So it's super important to continue to practice and not to mistake the Kundalini awakening and not to mistake the equanimity for more than it is. Going too hardcore. I've definitely made this mistake in my life many different times, in which I was going into the practice and putting more into it than I could actually afford at the time. So leaving your relationship, leaving your job, going on very long spiritual journeys when it's not appropriate. I mean, going on long spiritual journeys or going on very long meditation retreats is great, but you have to notice that you have the finances for it and that you can actually afford doing that when it comes to the different priorities in your life. So giving spiritual awakening the full priority of your life is a nice thing to do, but it's not always appropriate. So it's important to know that going too hardcore can be a mistake at some points. Okay, this is the end of this video. I hope that your journey of awakening continues to be effortless or somewhat easy. And do click on the link below to get my free balance of mind training, which can definitely help you in this process of awakening, especially in the dark night of the soul. Or you can also schedule a free consultation with me or join the free Facebook community, and I'll speak to you soon.